Hey there, native plant enthusiasts. This is Santino, Education Coordinator for Bowman's Wildflower Preserve, coming at you with our next native plant highlight. I'm here at the prickly pear patch, which you see here behind me, but that's not today's native plant. We already did that video. No, this video is a plant that holds a special place in my heart. It is one of the first native plants I was introduced to. I met this plant back when I first interviewed for the position of Education Coordinator here at the Preserve, and I was lucky enough to see this plant along with one of the fabulous insects that it is a host for. But before we get into today's plant, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who've subscribed to the channel. We've seen such growth over the past few weeks, and it is truly humbling. So thank you all for subscribing, and your interactions, the likes, the comments, they're just truly fantastic. And yeah, if you aren't subscribed, please do so. Share the video with a friend, with someone who you think might enjoy it. And yeah, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get into today's native plant. So what is today's native plant? It's Wild Senna. So Wild Senna is a herbaceous perennial. It is a lover of moist and well-drained soils. Typically you find it along, wet prairies, riverbanks, and ponds and the like. It thrives in full sun. What's really cool is it is a member of the pea family, and it is a nitrogen fixer, which means through a special relationship it has with the soil bacteria, it can actually add nitrogen back into the soil, which is great. In addition, it has a robust root system, which makes it phenomenal for soil stabilization, which is a characteristic you want with a plant that is going to be along your riverways. As we look more closely at the plant, it's hard to not be in awe by the brilliant yellow flowers. That and its pinnately compound leaves make it a super fun, attractive addition to your garden. These flowers, in addition to being beautiful, are a phenomenal source of pollen for our native bees, most notably the bumblebee. Let's take a closer look at them. If we look closely at the flowers, we will see that there's actually two tiers of anthers. There's an upper section and a lower section, and these produce two different kinds of pollen. The pollen that's produced in the upper anthers is not reproductively viable. Why might this be? Well, if we think about the pollination partner of this, the bumblebee, its face is going to be centered right there in the middle of the flower. Though the anthers that are on the lower tier, where the insect's abdomen will be, those are reproductively viable, which means the plant is spending no energy on pollen that it knows it won't be used for reproduction. And if we look even more closely here, we'll see that the female portions, female reproductive parts, are right there next to the lower anthers, which is, I think, a beautiful example of the coevolution. Now, this entire time we've been talking about the plant, I've mentioned pollen, but I haven't mentioned nectar. And that's because the flowers of Wild Senna don't produce nectar whatsoever. Instead, if we look closely, you'll see little nodules next to the leaf base, and it's actually these, they're known as extrafloral nectaries, and their role is to produce nectar that will attract other insects to the plant. So Wild Senna does supply nectar to insects, just not at the flowers. So these extrafloral nectaries will attract a whole slew of different insects, from ants that will defend the plant, all the way up to the butterflies that call this plant a home, or host, I should say. Wild Senna is an absolutely fabulous species for our native butterflies, and it is, of course, the host plant for several different sulfur species, including the very rare sleepy orange butterfly. Caterpillars of the sulfur butterflies depend on senna for both shelter and food. And what's fascinating is that research has shown that caterpillars that actually feed on this release a compound called pheromones. And what those are predator deterrents. So as the caterpillar feeds on Wild Senna, it releases a compound that will scare predators away. But these compounds have a secondary effect, and they actually attract our native bees to it. So Wild Senna, as it's being devoured by a caterpillar, is actually having these caterpillars draw or encourage insect pollinators to come visit the flowers. So wild senna has a long medical history, most notably as a laxative. And evidence of this dates back to the 9th century BCE. So folks have been using wild senna as a laxative for quite a long time. The compound that senna produces is known as Senna-sides, and you can still find them in the drugstore today. When consumed, Senna-sides are broken down by our gut bacteria, and these glycosides produce an active compound that stimulates intestinal peristalsis. In addition, senna has been used to treat various parasite as well as fungal infections. So unfortunately for wild senna, as well as all of the insects that it hosts, habitat fragmentation and expansion through urbanization are kind of the biggest challenges that these species face. But I hope that with today's video, you gained a greater appreciation for this glorious native plant and would love to make it an addition to your own home garden. That just about wraps it up for me today. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, share it with a friend, subscribe to our channel. All of these interactions, as well as your comments below, go a long way to help to preserve and furthering our mission. And as always, my friends, keep on experiencing what's natural and learn what's native. Take care.